You ever just look up at a giant skyscraper and think, how in the world did they pull that off? I mean, seriously, you've got thousands of people, millions of parts, and it's all supposed to come together perfectly, on time and on budget. Well, let's get into it. Because trying to tame one of those steel and glass beasts, it's going to be one of the most complicated puzzles you could ever try to solve. And let's be honest, it's a puzzle we often get spectacularly wrong, right? You've seen the news. That stadium, that new bridge, that shiny office tower, always months late, and always millions over budget. So what gives? What's the secret sauce? Or maybe, why is it so incredibly hard to get these things right? That's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
All right, first thing you got to get your head around is this. A huge construction site is nothing like a factory. It's not this neat, predictable place where you put stuff in one end and a finished product comes out the other. Nope. It's controlled chaos. It's a place where a million things can go wrong, and believe me, they often do.
So the project manager? They're basically a general fighting a war on like 10 different fronts at once. One minute, it's a freak blizzard that shuts everything down. The next, a whole truckload of bad material shows up. And don't even get me started on sequencing. If you make one tiny mistake, like, say, putting up the walls before the plumbing is fully tested, bam! You've just created a domino effect of delays that can screw up the schedule for weeks, maybe even months.
So how do you even begin to manage that chaos? You can't just cross your fingers and hope for the best, right? You need a system, a really, really rigorous one. And the secret weapon here is something called the project control cycle. Think of it like the project's nervous system, a constant feedback loop that's designed to catch problems when they're small before they blow up into total disasters.
So how does this thing actually work? Well, it all starts out pretty simple. You make a plan, you set your targets, your benchmarks for how much time and money everything should take. But then comes the really critical part. You're constantly, and I mean constantly, monitoring what's happening on the ground and holding it up against your plan. You're always asking, are we where we're supposed to be? And if the answer is no, which, let's be real, it almost always is, you spot that difference, you take action to fix it, and then, and this is the part people forget, you actually learn from what happened.
And that brings us to what is, honestly, the most crucial step in the whole cycle. And, kind of ironically, the one that gets skipped the most, the debrief. Look, I get it. The project's over, the whole team is just wiped out, and they're already getting emails about the next big job. But just moving on without stopping to document what worked and what didn't, it's a massive, massive mistake. It's like you just ran a marathon, and instead of looking at your time in splits to figure out how to improve, you just throw your shoes in the closet and forget about it. It makes no sense.
So within that big control cycle, there are two huge monsters that a project manager is always wrestling with: cost and time. They're the big ones. So let's talk about the money first. You know, trying to keep a billion-dollar project on budget isn't something you can do with just a simple spreadsheet. It's way too complex. You need a universal language, a way to talk about every single piece of the puzzle.
And that language has a name. It's called the CSI master format. The best way to think about it is like the Dewey Decimal System, but for construction. Every single thing, and I mean everything, from one single bolt to 1 hour of an electrician's work, gets its own unique code. Why? Because it lets managers track exactly where every single penny is going. It's that old saying, right? You can't control what you can't measure. Well, this is how they measure everything. And having that insane level of detail is a game changer. Because when a report lands on your desk and says, hey, we're over budget on insulation, your job isn't over. Actually, that's when the real work starts. Now you have to be a detective. Was it because the material price suddenly shot up? Or did the crew get sloppy and waste a bunch of it? Or maybe something else entirely? Digging in and finding the why behind that number, that's the real art of cost control.
Okay, so you've got all this stuff to worry about, right? Steel, concrete, subcontractors, giant cranes. So what do you think is the number one, biggest, most unpredictable risk to the budget? What's the thing that keeps project managers up at night? I'll give you a hint. It's probably not what you think. It's the people. It's labor. Think about it. The price of steel, you can lock that in. Concrete, same deal. But human productivity? Oh man, that is all over the place. It's just so hard to predict. You might have one crew that's just on fire, 10% faster than average. Another crew might be having a bad week. And a small drop in productivity doesn't just hit your labor costs. It creates delays that ripple out and wreck your schedule. And that costs a fortune. That incredible risk, That volatility, that is exactly why the main contractors try to subcontract as much work as they possibly can. They're basically paying someone else to take on that headache.
And that brings us neatly to the other monster in the room, time. You really can't separate costs and time. They're basically two sides of the exact same coin. If you're behind schedule, you're almost guaranteed to be losing money. It could be late delivery penalties, or just the simple cost of keeping the lights on and paying for the site for another week or another month. Time really is money here.
Okay, so in every project schedule, there's this thing called the critical path. It's a sequence of tasks that have zero slack. If any one of those jobs gets delayed by even one day, the entire project's finish date gets pushed back by a day. It's that serious. So when something on that critical path falls behind, you can't just cross your fingers and hope you'll make up the time later. You won't. You have to take immediate, drastic action. And the term for this is pretty intense. You have to crash the schedule, which is a fancy way of saying you're about to spend a bunch of money on purpose just to buy back that time you lost.
So let's play project manager for a second. Imagine you're 2 days behind on a critical task. What do? Well, you've got a few options, and none of them are perfect. Option 1, you can pay everybody overtime. That's pricey, it's going to burn out your crew, and it only gets you 1 day back. Option 2, add a whole second shift. That gets you 2 days, but now you need more supervisors, more security, the costs add up fast. Or option 3, bring in a bigger crew. This one's cheaper, but now you risk people tripping over each other, getting in each other's way, which could actually slow things down. So what's the call? What would you do?
Well, if you're looking at the numbers, the choice is actually pretty clear. Bringing in that larger crew gets you the full 2 days back for just $2,000. It's the biggest bang for your buck. You save the most time for the least amount of cash. And this is a perfect bite-sized example of the kind of tough, data-driven calls these managers are making literally all day, every day.
Okay, so we've been deep in the weeds, right? In that daily tug-of-war between money and the clock. But how does a manager zoom out? With all this chaos, how do they take the pulse of the project and see the big picture? How do they know if they're actually winning or losing? They use an incredibly powerful tool called earned value analysis. The best way to think of it is like a doctor's checkup for the entire project. It's this one simple framework that pulls together both cost and schedule to give you one single, clear snapshot of how you're really doing.
And this chart right here shows you exactly what I mean. Let's take this simple tiling job as an example. Look at that first bar. That's our earned value, the value of the work we've physically completed. In this case, $8,000 worth. Okay, simple enough. Now look at the second bar. That's our actual cost, what we've actually spent so far to get that work done. $10,000. Ouch. And just to pour a little salt in the wound, look at the third bar. That's the plan. By this point, we should have had $9,000 worth of work done. So what's the diagnosis here? It's pretty brutal. We're over budget and we're behind schedule. That is, not a good day at the office. So all this amazing data, the cost codes, the decisions about crashing the schedule, this earned value analysis, it all brings us right back to where we started. The final, and I'll say it again, critical step is to take all this information and document it. You build a historical database. Because when you do that, the lessons from this one project become an incredible resource that makes your estimates for the next project way more accurate and your whole plan that much stronger.
When you boil it all down, the real secret to taming a skyscraper isn't just about fighting fires in the present moment. It's about being disciplined enough to learn from the past. And that really just leaves us with one big nagging question, doesn't it? If every single one of these projects is a masterclass, a perfect lesson in what to do and what not to do, why on earth do so many companies keep skipping class?